Welcome everyone to our webinar. You will learn more about our work here at the Cambridge Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Research Group. And you will also be able to hear what our participants have to say about our research. But first, we're going to hear from Dr. Shahid Zaman, who will tell us more about the program and the benefits of taking part in research, and also some of what we have found so far. And I'm passing on to Shahid.
Thank you, Monica. Thanks for everyone for joining us. So I'm just going to tell you a little about what we actually do in the research program, why it's important, and of course, what are the benefits for people who are involved in this. And when do we get to see benefits? So that's also important. People, we've been doing this research for many years now. Before we do that, I need to help give some background and help people understand who may not know too much about this subject, about what the brain and what it does. So that's very important to understand before we go on to how it can go wrong. So of course, the brain is important for helping us to think and imagine things. It helps to remember, important for memory. It can help us to concentrate when doing some task. The concentration is because of the brain is able to do that. And also we can understand what people are saying through language and speech, and also be able to speak as well, of course. The other things it can help us to do is to see what we're going to do tomorrow, plan things and look forward to things, and smell and hear and see and touch, all those senses. And of course, it also helps in your mood, if you're feeling happy and sad, even pain or excitement or anger, that all comes from the brain. And, moving your arms and legs, it's also the function of the brain. Now, what happens, how does the brain actually do all this? Well, it is very complicated. If you look inside the brain, you see that it's made of millions and millions of tiny little things called cells or neurons, that are all connected to each other, and they're able to communicate or talk to each other. And these cells use tiny amounts of electricity to do this. And just like the rest of the body, the brain and its cells obviously need to stay healthy. But the problem is that if you don't look after your brain, or if you get ill, it'll stop working properly. And of course, as time goes by, as people get older, the brain doesn't tend to slow down. It's as if it's gone into some kind of retirement. So how do we know if the brain is working well? Well, there are different ways of doing it. And one of them is to put these things called electrodes. You see a picture of it on the right with a man with those microphones, you could call them, tiny little microphones, which pick up those chattering between the brain cells and the neurons. And that can tell us how they communicate with each other. And from that, you can pick up patterns and see if there's any problems with that communication between cells. We can also take a picture of the whole brain using scanners called MRI and PET, and you'll get to hear a little bit more later on from Monica. And there's a picture of that one example on the right. And these tell us what sort of things are happening in the brain in terms of certain substances, which I'll talk about again later on. And we can also check how good you are at remembering things, concentrating, thinking, and these are using tests or quizzes, which people tend to enjoy when they do that. So memory and thinking problems, I'm going to focus on that because that's important to the sort of type of research we do. These are unfortunately, they're very common in people who have Down syndrome around the age of 40 and 60 or older. And they're also, of course, common in people who don't have Down syndrome, who are over the age of 60. So what we're trying to do is find out why that happens. And so we have been doing quite a lot of scans and other measurements, similar to what I described in the previous slide. to see, what's going on. And what we found so far is there's these proteins, which called, one of them is called amyloid and another one is called tau, which if you get a buildup of those in the brain, and you can measure them using these PET scans. If you get a buildup of these in the brain, it can be something that's probably is responsible for your memory problems. And there's a picture of one of these scans again on the right at the bottom, and above you see the actual scanner, which looks like a big washing machine. And one of our participants is sitting there with Vicky, who helps them to explain what's going on. But before we go, and get a bit miserable about, our memories fading with age, what we have to think about is how we can keep ourselves healthy. And there are ways to keep your brain healthy. And one of them is a good, fun way, which is to have lots of friends and be sociable, go to parties, have fun, do exercise. That's so important, not just for the brain, but also the body. That means walking or running or even joining the gym, whichever suits you. And exercising the brain helps, thinking and learning new things. And by doing quizzes, that's also very good for the brain. And of course, you need to eat healthy food. And there's a picture of nice green salads and tomatoes, but there's other healthy foods you can have. You have to keep your weight down as well. That's important. And keep smiling and stay happy. Don't be miserable. Don't get stressed or worried. And of course, see your doctor every year. Once a year is good, just for a regular checkup. A bit like a car that needs its MOT every year. You need to do that to stay healthy. And of course, if you do get unwell, you've got to get some help very quickly. So when the brain slows down or doesn't work, there are a number of reasons for that. I mentioned age is one, but there are actually other things that can happen. But you must see a doctor if you're worried about that. And one of the reasons could be because you've got pain in your ears, your teeth. You need to see a dentist for that, or somebody to look at the GP to look at your ears. So it may be blocked with some wax, causing problems, and your thyroid may be not producing enough thyroxine. You need to see the GP for that as well. And if you're stressed or sad, you need to see someone who can help you, psychologically, or a psychiatrist who can help if your mood is down or low. That can also affect your thinking as well. And a really important problem is that if you're becoming forgetful, that you need, because of your memory, it's not as good as it used to be, then you need to take it seriously. What else? So what have we found so far? The other thing we do is, I mentioned the scans of the EEGs, which look at the activity of the brain, and using these so-called microphones or electrodes. Another thing you can do is look in the back of the eye, which is the bit of the eye that's called the retina. And why do we do that? Because by looking at the back of the eye, it tells you what the state of the brain is. And by measuring the thickness of the retina, we found that this actually matches with the amount of these amyloid blobs in the brain that I mentioned earlier. So that's just a starting point of how we can get close to understanding what's going on in the brain. And now hand it over to Jess, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the eye.
Hi everyone. So yeah, I'm Jess. I'm a research assistant working in the group, and I'll explain a little bit about how we can look at people's eyes. So as Shahid mentioned, the retina is the very back of your eye. So we need special cameras like the one we've got pictured here, and it's called an OCT camera. And this camera is able to look specifically at the back of your eye and at your retina. And this camera takes a 3D photograph of your eye. And this means that we can have a good look at what's going on under the surface of your eyes. And having an OCT photograph taken is a lot like when you go to the opticians. So if you have to get your eyes tested to see whether you need new glasses or not, and nothing will touch your eye, we just take very high definition photographs. Next slide, please. And so I'll go through a bit about what to expect if you do have a photograph of your eye taken. So first of all, we'll ask you to sit really close to the camera, like we've got here, and you place your chin on a chin rest. We then ask you to look straight ahead into the camera, and you'll see quite a bright flashing light. Nothing will touch your eye again, it won't hurt you in any way, but it will be a little bit bright for a few seconds. It's very, very quick. We then take the photograph and we get photographs like the ones we can see here. And at the bottom, we can see one that is a cross-sectional image of your retina. And here we can see all the different layers of your retina. And for this study, for the eye study, we're particularly interested in measuring the thickness of these different layers. And we hope that by doing this, we can kind of learn more about how people's eyes change as they get older and why some people might have the memory problems as they age, like Shahid's just spoken about. And so that's a very brief overview of the eye study. We'll have an opportunity to ask questions later, but for now I'll pass you over to April, who will talk more about how we can listen to the electrical activity of the brain.
Hi everyone, I'm April and I'm a PhD student. I'd like to tell you about another way we can study the brain in Down syndrome, which is to listen to the brain activity. And as Shahid mentioned, cells in the brain communicate with small amounts of electrical activity. And in our research lab, we use a special cap seen here in the top photo that listens to electrical activity from outside the head. The cap has over 100 soft microphones listening and does not hurt. And whilst wearing the cap and watching movies or listening to sounds coming from headphones, we can record brain activity waves seen in the bottom right here, figure here, which are extremely rich in information. And we are looking for electrical signatures in brain activity to understand why some people may have memory problems. And I'll next pass it on to Monica, who can tell you more about research in her group.
Hello, everyone. I'm Monica, for people who haven't met me yet. I'm a research assistant in Cambridge, and I'll let you know a bit more about what happens if you're interested in taking part in our research and the different types of studies you can join. So our largest study, many of you know it as NIAD, will be continuing for 5 more years under a new name, ABCDS. This is our big study because it involves 4 visits to Cambridge. And at each visit, you will complete various quizzes and puzzles. We will take a blood sample from you, as you can see here on the picture. And you will have either 1 or 2 scans, depending on which visit you're coming in for. And we have so far scanned 54 people as part of NIAD. And we hope that we'll see more people joining ABCDS so that we can take this number to somewhere around 63 people at least. And I want to use this opportunity to say thank you to all our participants who have taken part so far. It's been a pleasure to work with you. Thank you so much. There are other studies that you could choose to join. One of them is the eye study with Jess that you met earlier. The second one is the EEG study with April and Chiara. You'll meet Chiara later, and you have already met April. And there is also another study, an exciting study, which we're still in the process of setting up. The name is TRCDS, which stands for Trial Ready Cohort in Down Syndrome. And the purpose of this study is to gather a group of people with Down syndrome who would like to be considered for potential future clinical trials. This study will be very similar to our big ABCDS study. And if you're interested, do ask us for more information about it. Finally, we are also in the process of starting a new project with the aim of investigating the so-called regression syndrome, which is seen in a few people with Down syndrome. No one fully understands this regression syndrome or how to treat it, and this project will try to look into this. This project will start later this year, kindly funded by the Down Syndrome Association. And once again, we will need your help to start this study, and we'll keep you updated on the progress. And finally, we really hope that other people would like to volunteer in our studies. If you're interested in finding out more about our research, you can sign up for our newsletter by using the sign up link on our website, or just send us an email or call us. You can find our phone number and our email on this page. And you can also just Google Cambridge Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Research Group, and the website should pop up. Okay, so this is the end of the presentation. And now we would like to show you a short video where our participants talk a little bit about their experiences in the study. Jess and I and some of the group members at the DSA asked questions to our participants, and let's find out what they had to say about our research. So the first question was, how did they decide to take part in the research study?
Mainly, why I wanted to take part is because mainly is for helping people with learning difficulties and who people are not that well. It's because I had two people in my family got Alzheimer's, and my uncle got Alzheimer's, and also my sister, mother-in-law had it. And I thought, I'll have to take it on and see what it's like.
Probably a couple of years later that Liz was talking about the siblings and having siblings involved. And I remember sitting down and she came to Mum's and we all sat in the living room and she talked through what it was. And I thought, well, yeah, why not take part as well? Because if it helps to have that sibling sort of control, then yeah, no, seemed a perfectly good thing to do.
Bye. Well, when it comes to doing research, I'm always volunteering.
Well, my brother Alex had been doing it for many years, and obviously I knew that you guys needed to control participants to take part alongside the people with Down syndrome. So I suppose it was kind of a sense of public duty that made me want to take part. Yeah.
So the second question we asked, what did the research study involve?
Involved doing is mainly sort of the scans and stuff, the PT scan, and the treadmill with the mask and the pipes and all that kind of stuff. The games, the puzzles.
Where Monica came to my house to do a sort of cognitive test and so on. So yeah, it's obviously those two trips there.
Volunteers, 19. There was the quizzes and the puzzles. At Douglas House. Got my blood sample taken on the 27th at the Wilson Brain Imaging Centre.
Yeah.
And then on the 27th, my scan.
Like memory games and puzzles, some of which I found easy and quite fun, some of which were harder but still enjoyed, but still made me think, and very well, I like a challenge.
It involved like memory games, the test game memory, and also things like puzzles and like kind of like puzzles and things to move and help your memory go. And
so the next question we ask is how they found the quizzes and puzzles.
Yeah, some were fun, some were a bit hard and difficult, but I soon got through them eventually.
Puzzles.
Yeah, so yeah, he did like doing them. Yeah, he told me yesterday he found them quite fun.
Yeah.
It was fun, and it was fun to do. Do you like doing puzzles anyway, don't you? Yeah, I do. Yeah. Short and easy questions, and they weren't too difficult because I always feel like I'm going to embarrass myself by not getting the questions right. But they weren't. They were just kind of straightforward. I remember that.
You do feel a bit on the spot and under pressure, just having to do it without necessarily knowing what the questions are going to be. But I think overall, yeah, it was quite fun being asked to do different things and think about different things. So yeah, really, really not bad at all.
Quite fun, and some of them are quite easy, and well, yeah, let's just say after a while of doing lots of them, my brain was like, but yeah, all very interesting and a good.
Difficult, tricky in the word, tricky, and also tricky help you thinking as well.
What was it like having the scan?
The scans, mainly the first scan was okay, was good and excellent. And then mainly they put on, you had to choose your own music to play while you were in the first scan. Mainly the second one, which I was a bit nervous about because of how long I'm going to be in the scan for, really, because it was so long.
No, it was fine. I think obviously all the staff who work at the centre in Cambridge, where you do the PET scans, they're very nice, and they sort of tell you what's going to happen before it happens. They give you earplugs. They play music of your choosing to you whilst you're in the machine. I fell asleep a couple of times, so yeah, I didn't find it too bad at all.
Was the nervous, scared, and
It's okay, really, because they're very good. They explained what was going to happen. And for me, it was actually just quite a nice, peaceful time to to not do anything. I mean, it's not pleasant being sort of trapped in that. So I can imagine for Rich, it was probably he probably felt quite nervous about it, but because the team was so nice.
Another one I was lying down, looking at the ceiling. The scan was being performed, basically.
And were you scared during the
scan? Scared? Not at all. I'm not a scary person.
Scan, I don't mind it, but I kind of bit boring. So when you're laying there, you're like, okay, you have to lay there. It's a bit hard. You can't move. You've got your head stuck in that thing, and it's like a lot of noise, and a bit uncomfortable, and it's just hard.
And were you scared in the scanner?
No, I'm not scared. No, it's a bit uncomfortable afterwards.
Okay. And
Yeah.
was it loud, the noise?
Some of the noise was loud, but I don't mind it. Yeah.
did you have fun doing the research?
I did have fun. Yeah, it was a bundle of laughs, and I enjoyed it. Had fun, and mainly, yeah, it was good. It was fine. A lot of fun. I love to work with a team.
Well, there wasn't much that I didn't enjoy. There wasn't much that I didn't enjoy or find interesting, really.
I think especially the quizzes that we had to do, the researcher I was with made it kind of quite fun, and we had a bit of a laugh about it, which was good. And yeah, just doing something completely different. I've never done anything like that before.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, we did. It was good fun. We didn't go together actually to the research. Yes, we weren't doing it at the same time. But I enjoyed it. It was nice. It felt like a little bit of a break, and got to stay in a hotel, and I went to the cinema and did stuff like that. So it was actually quite nice and relaxing, because once you get over the kind of I'm going into a scan thing, actually it's just a chance to have a little think and to just have a break from work and things like that. So it was fine. Yeah, it was good. It would have been, I think in future we're going to go together, aren't we, and do things together. And Hannah went up with our mum, and maybe we'll do that all together in future as well. So it's quite nice. It's a little trip away, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So the next question we asked was, what was the best about taking part?
The best bits were meeting new people, making friends with them, and all sorts really. Part of competing is because it helps, because I love joining the team, and also it helps the people with the Down syndrome.
Yeah, when they came back, I wasn't in the research on your first trip, but then when they came back, I was a bit jealous, because they came back and they'd done all these fun things together, and they'd had two nights in a hotel. I think it was 2 nights, was it?
Yeah,
I think in a hotel. Yeah. I wanted to get involved.
Yeah.
Best bit, I suppose, yeah, just just being able to sort of stay in Cambridge and sort of see a little bit of the city. I mean, it's obviously it's a very historic place. So yeah.
So the next question we asked was, what was the worst part about taking part?
The worst bit was the needles, what went inside me, like for taking the blood and all that kind of stuff.
The rough, nothing.
Yeah.
Being nervous, scary, nervous.
That was that bit.
Yeah.
Remember the bit that you didn't like?
The puncture.
The puncture.
It takes a part, it got in a needle. When I was doing the blood bit, I got like needles.
Mm-hmm. I can't really think of a bad part. I think maybe very early on, having to do the scans and having to have the cannula first, I think there was a bit of a waiting around. So I would recommend taking something. I was a student at the time, so I took lots of books with me and managed to make the most of that time. But yeah, that's maybe the worst bit, just maybe having to wait around for a bit. But if you have something to do, it's fine.
Yeah.
Would you tell other people with Down syndrome to help out with research?
Yes, definitely, and I would recommend it, yes. It helps other people, and it helps with people with Down syndrome and learning difficulties and sort of mainly those kinds of things, really.
It's a pretty good, yes, I like it.
I would like to say about my girlfriend, and she got Downs, and all that other girls in her house. It got another Down girl in there, so I recommend her as well. And can't think of other people, but I think we'll recommend the other people with Down.
Okay. Definitely, yes. I'm going to say yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would do it again if I had to.
And we finally asked them if there is anything else that they would like to share.
Well, there was one funny thing, was I did mention it to someone. It was when I was on the treadmill with all the wires and the pipes and the mask and stuff, I felt like I was a monster or something. on the treadmill with all those things coming out of me. I didn't feel strange, more like sort of like, I'm here, get on with it and do it.
And what kind of things would you say keeps you coming back? Because you keep going back to do different things. What kind of things influence?
Yeah, well, mainly sort of like it helps other people with service I like to do and stuff like that. And I find it interesting and all sorts really. I like coming to Cambridge, visiting you lot, and it's nice to see all of you as well.
To say that everyone I've met through the study who's been running it has been really helpful and really friendly. So if you're thinking about taking part but you're not sure, feel free to ask questions and ask for more information, because I think one of the best things for me was just that everything was very clear and easy and very welcoming.
Why? So just to mention, next we asked Dr. Shahid Zaman to answer some of your questions as well.
It's important that people with Down syndrome are included in research.
That's a good question. My answer is that lots of people with Down syndrome do get memory problems as they get older. So to find out why this happens, we really need to do research. That's the only way to find out. And it's not fair that if people who don't have Down syndrome, such as the general population, are the only ones who are allowed to be involved in research. And it's going to eventually benefit people with Down syndrome if they're involved in such research.
What have you found out so far through the research?
Okay, so as we know, many people with Downs as they get older do get memory problems, because what happens in their brain is they get some changes in the brain, abnormal changes. And that's due to abnormal proteins. One's called amyloid, the other one's called tau. And these get deposited in your brain like tiny blobs. And what we found out is we can take pictures of these blobs even before people start getting symptoms of memory problems. So what that means is that we can start treating when the blobs actually appear, just many, many years before any memory problems start to occur. And that's a very exciting finding. And in the near future, we're trying to set up some clinical trials so we can start treating this problem and so prevent someone having memory problems.
And the last question is, do you have any advice on how we can look after our memory?
It's a great question. There's a lot we can do to stop all these memory problems from occurring. And I think this applies to everyone. The important thing is to keep yourself healthy. Physically healthy means do exercise, do it if you can, do it every day. Keep your mind busy, which means, learn new things, learn whatever it is you like doing. To have lots of friends and socialize. And of course, eating well is good, important to eat fresh vegetables and fruit. And also, it's really important to see a GP at least once a year so they can do a complete health check. So if there's any problems, they can treat them sooner rather than later.
Okay, so this is the end of our video, and I hope you all enjoyed it. So the next bit of this webinar would be to open the stage to questions. Some of our researchers might want to introduce themselves and say a few words about what they do. I'm going to be monitoring the chat box for any questions, and I will read them out loud, and then I'll give the chance to either people on the research team or our participants who are currently on the panel to answer them. So yeah, let's start. We have one question actually. So is there a minimum age limit for taking part in the trials? So if it is about the big study ABCDS, we have an age limit of 25. Jess, is there an age limit for your study?
Sorry, I'm just going to answer that. Answered it by the chats, but there isn't an age limit. You're right, for the ABCDS study, it's 25, like you say, and above. But for all the other studies, where we want people who are younger as well. And maybe Jess, you want to add anything else? Have you got any?
Just 18 plus at the minute. We're not accepting children just now, but watch this space.
I'm Isabel. I'm one of the neuropsychologists on the study. I work very closely with Shahid, with Jess, and with Monica, and I'm part of the new trial on regression. I think we'll want people from 80. So that's where you start to. It's as if you go backwards, and you appear like a younger person than you are, and you lose skills and you lose abilities to do things that you could do before. That's what regression is. I think we're going to be looking for people aged 18 for that study. Could I just talk to another issue that was raised? People were saying what fun it was to do the quizzes and puzzles. I'm really glad to hear that, because there were an awful lot of them. And one of the things we found out is that we don't need to do so many of those. So when you take part in the ABCDS, which is the carry on from NIAD, you'll find that we aren't asking you. It's less demanding, both on people with Down syndrome and on their families. So that's one of the things that we found out, is that we don't need the huge amount of tests. We can have far fewer tests.
Okay, so Monica, I can see lots of questions coming through. You want to state the questions, and anybody who can answer it.
Yes. Yeah. So we have a question. Are you looking for participants for the regression study? My son has experienced regression, and we would be very keen for him to be part of this if it's so. Thank you.
So the answer is yes, but we'll be starting a study hopefully in October time. So you should just look out for on our website, or we'll have a way of recruiting people and people who are interested. We definitely will be interested in. And Isabel.
If you wanted, I wonder if I put my email address on the site, you can let me on the chat. You can let me know, give me your details, and I'll let you know when it's starting. That's fantastic. Thank you.
And if anybody else wants to do that too, I think that'll be a good help for us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Next question, Monica.
There is a question. So my daughter turned 5, and if there is some trial for her, I would be glad to contribute.
So we generally work with people who are old, in the adults, over 18. So it's the short answer is no. But obviously, when she's older, if we're still around, might want to. If she's still interested, so I can ask her to join one of our trials or a research project. Yeah.
The next question, do you have a view on the type of diet that should help dementia? I am thinking here of a plant-based diet.
Well, I don't think there's anything specific that's useful for Alzheimer's and dementia in general. But people are looking into things like, well, just what's good for the heart basically is good for the brain is the sort of rule I would take away. Which means trying to keep your cholesterol down by having a mixed diet of, fruits and vegetables, and avoiding obviously calorific foods, which tend to make you gain weight. And more recently, there's a lot of work going on into, what's happening in your gut, the gut microbiome. but that's quite new stuff, and that has been shown to have some impact on the brain as well. But these are things that hopefully we'll know more about in the future.
Mm-hmm. And the next question is, can I ask Shahid about treatment in respect to the amyloid blobs? Would any treatment be about preventing them or simply managing the effects better?
So one of the major things I mentioned in the discussion was these processes of the blobs, as I call them, amyloid and tau, they are there for a long time before any symptoms appear. By long time, I mean years, maybe 10, 15 years. So you can imagine that you need to try and get in there early if you're going to cause it, if you're going to prevent the problem. And so there have been trials in the general population which have aimed to reduce this using various techniques, such as antibodies, to reduce the amount of amyloid. And so far, they've probably been unsuccessful because people haven't treated them early enough. But the hope is in people with Downs that we can do the same and try and prevent it. Perhaps we're more likely to get success because we can easily monitor the sort of people who have these problems. So the idea is to prevent it, but we don't know if it would work or not until we actually try it.
So the next question is, are the control participants family members of those people with Down syndrome that are part of the study already? Yes, the answer is yes. They are sibling controls. So they are either brothers or sisters of our Down syndrome participants. And the next question is, so it's in a way related to what Shahid talked about, what treatment can be used to prevent memory loss once amyloid and tau clumps have started. So Shahid.
So the treatment at the moment that everyone, if you go to a neurologist or a specialist in this field, if you're talking about medication, there are 2 or 3 drugs that are available, which help a little bit. So one of them is called Aricept. There's a few others. But they only have a marginal effect, unfortunately. And that's the only sort of medication that's available at the moment.
Okay. Will NIAID participants automatically transfer to ABCDS? So we will ask you to consent. Yeah, very good question. Hannah.
Thank you, Hannah.
Hannah, for the question. So we will ask you again to read the updated materials, show you what the differences between the studies are, and then we'll ask you to sign again a consent form. So yeah, you will automatically pass on to the study as long as you consent and you're fine with this. Yeah.
But just to say, the study, the NIAID and the ABCDS studies are very similar. Well, there's not a huge change between the two.
Yes. The next question is, should you take any supplements?
Well, I think the answer for that is that there aren't enough clinical trials to show whether supplements are useful or not. There have been, for example, there's been trial with vitamin E, and that's not been shown to be useful or shown major effect. I think I go back to saying that I would just focus on just having a healthy, balanced diet and exercise, because that's definitely been shown to improve health. And not worry too much about the supplements. Although there are people who read on the internet or whatever that this supplement or that supplement will help, including, for example, vitamin D. So I would just focus on that. But now that I mentioned vitamin D, but there's new guidance which states that vitamin D is low in the population. Perhaps there should be supplementation for that, and there's some link with that and memory problems as you get older.
And we have a question. Do you think screening for amyloid blobs for people with Down syndrome will come in?
I don't think it will, unless it's being used to test a treatment to get rid of the amyloid, or if, you know, if it's because we know that it's not going to add to anything, you know, in terms of clinically. So I don't think for the general population, it's probably more useful, because there are more variety of causes of memory decline or dementia. So in those situations, it's a lot more useful from a diagnostic point of view. At the moment, it's still used as a research tool in our population here.
Okay, we also have a question on how people can access the recording of this webinar. And this is a very good question. We are recording, and I think we'll try to put it on YouTube. And the Down Syndrome Association, I believe, also have a way of putting it on their YouTube channel. I think we can also put it on our website, the Cambridge Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Research Group website. And we'll try to do this as soon as possible. You can also contact us if you can't find the link. Please feel free, and I will once again post the contact details here at the end of the chat, the phone number and the email you can use to contact us. So feel free to do that.
There's more questions, I think.
Yeah, might you send participants a link? Yes, so I guess it's reasonable for the people who have already signed up and we have their emails in the system. We are going to send you an email with the recording. Yes, that's very sensible. Can you clarify about a link between vitamin D and memory loss in older age groups?
So, so there's no, I mean, it's quite complicated. It goes back to many years ago, when somebody proposed that there was a link between calcium, because vitamin D has to do with calcium, and the onset of dementia. And I think what's happened is no one really proved that there's a direct link. But we know for general health, it's a good idea to make sure that you have enough vitamin D in your body, and therefore supply of calcium, especially in countries like the UK, where the amount of sunlight is very poor. And it would therefore be helpful if if people were on vitamin D for that reason. And in Down syndrome, it's perhaps also important because people with Down syndrome tend to have bones that suffer with thinness, relatively speaking. So they may also benefit. But I would urge you to check with a GP if you think you need supplements first. I wouldn't just go ahead and do it. So, but in terms of the link with dementia, and it's not straightforward.
Thank you, Shahid. Can you take part in the research without doing the scans? It is the scans that caused our daughter not to take part? Shahid, there was some discussions about this, I believe, in the ABCDS.
So, I mean, as for the ABCDS, I think the scans are pretty central.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for the regression study, we haven't really decided exactly what we're going to do. But I'm sure there will be some people who can just have the sort of the quizzes and questionnaires. And maybe Isabel wants to add something to this.
Oh, sorry. It's from Mark. Mark again. I think the scans are sent, as Shahid said, the scans are central to ABCDS. But if your daughter would like to take part, I think there will be an opportunity in the regression study. Please feel free to email me. As Shahid's already said, that study is by no means set in stone at the moment. I can see Tony Holland there. I'm going to ask Tony, would you like to talk to that? Will the regression study, is it?
Yes, I think one thing to say is just to be clear that the regression study and the dementia study, if you like, are two separate studies. And when we when we talk about regression, we are talking about this usually temporary loss of skills that happens in an age group before you see dementia. Now, if you are someone with Down syndrome who fall into that age group, so in the 20s, for example, and you have had this brief or this loss of skills for unknown reasons. Sometimes it looks a little like depression, but it's really for unknown reasons. Then we would certainly welcome you as part of the regression study. And as Isabel and others have said, at the moment we are deciding exactly what tests that we would do. But I think it's unlikely that everyone would have a scan in that test. I think mainly it will be about having the types of tests that Isabel mentioned that people are having with the dementia study, so tests of memory and that sort of thing. And also there, as usual, there would almost certainly be blood tests, but we may be asking some people, I think, to have brain scans, but we haven't finally decided yet. We only heard a few days ago that the Down Syndrome Association was very kindly supporting this. And so we're now really working up the final details of that study.
I mean, if you want to, what I suggest, if your daughter would like to see what it's like to be a participant, Jess's study with the eyes is very quick. It's not at all intrusive. It's nothing like having those tests they have at the opticians, where if any of you have had at the ophthalmologist where they squirt air into your eye, if any of you have ever had that, it's completely painless. That's an easy one to take part in. And also April's talked a bit about her study. I know it looks like you've got your head like you're wearing a shower cap, but that again is a nice easy study to take part. If you're looking and you want to start kind of quite soon, you want to take part as a result of that, great. Jessica and April's studies are both very suitable. I'm wondering, Monica, how we can, perhaps at the end we should put for participants some of the relevant contact details for everybody, so they can talk, they can find out a bit more about the studies and contact people. But thank you for asking that question.
I'm muted. So there is a related question about regression. Is regression only seen in those aged 18 and early 20s, or can it appear in older people with Down syndrome?
So shall I answer that, or Tony?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the regression, as Tony mentioned, occurs usually in adolescence or early 20s, essentially. But there are a few cases obviously come up in the 30s. And then it gets a bit confusing whether that's anything to do with age-related memory problems. But the regression itself tends to not change much after its onset, and it stays stable for some time. And then sometimes a lot of people do recover as well. So there are differences in how it presents, and that's how we sort of find out what it might be. So I hope that answers your question.
Can I, Monica, add to that by saying that Maddie, who some of you may remember, who did the first eye study, before she left to work at Alzheimer's Research UK, she did a review of this regression. And what she found, that people who had published and described it before, what they described is often it starts with a change in sleep pattern. So as Shahida was saying, someone with Down syndrome in their teens or early 20s gets an unexplained change in their sleep, and then it may progress a bit more to some loss of communication skills and some also slowing down and other problems. Eventually, though, it does seem to pick up again. So it's different from dementia in that way. Dementia tends to be, it's progressive, whereas this does tend to improve. But whilst the person is in that stage, it does seem to be quite significant and really does have quite an impact on their lives. So that's why it's really important for us to understand what might be causing that, and ultimately how it can be treated.
Thank you. Monica, I could see there's just one from James that I think James Robinson that's just got just above where you are, but I think we missed his question above Lynn's.
Okay, what is the question, if you can see?
I can't see it yet, but I think he wanted to. Sorry?
Yeah, I can see the question. I can read it out.
Okay, thank you.
I'm 32. Am I too old to volunteer to take part in the next study, ABCDS? Also to take part in the regression study? No, you're not too old for ABCDS. We recruit people in your age group. And someone else can answer about the regression study.
Again, I think we'd be welcome people who wanted to be in the regression study of that age. Yeah, so you'd be I think you would be eligible.
Okay. I'm just trying to see where I am. So there is a question about the TRCDS study. So the way this study will be set up is that we will co-enroll people in ABCDS and TRCDS. It might be getting a bit more complicated now.
Maybe I could explain.
You could explain.
So anyone who's in our present study, in the NIAID and the new ABCDS, they've obviously had lots of tests done to see if they got these amyloid things and tau. And so from that, we will ask any of those people if they were interested in being in a list of potential people or participants who may in the future want to be part of a clinical trial. So they wouldn't be doing it, they just have to say yes or no. And if they were interested in being in a clinical trial, so this is a international study where other sites are doing the same thing, sort of getting a list of people who might be interested. So when there's a new drug that we think might hold promise for treating this condition, they would be asked to come along and be joined part of the the clinical trial, and that would start in our site and several other sites across the States and in other parts like in Spain as well. And all together, the results come together will tell us if that new treatment is going to be any good or not. So that's the idea behind that. So at this stage, we're just trying to get volunteers who might be interested in a future trial.
Okay, and we have a question. Do people with Down syndrome always develop amyloid deposits? Is it inevitable?
In about, yes, I would say 95% of the chances of you having, yes, that's true. But also remember that in the general population, if you reach the age of between 65 upwards, you start getting amyloid as well. It's just that in people with Downs, it happens to happen much earlier by 10, 15 years. So that's the basic difference. And I think that sort of hopefully helps to answer the question.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just say thank you to everyone who's come here, especially the participants. I think it's been really fantastic. And I'm hoping everybody who's in the webinar got something out of it, something useful.
Yes.